What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another Perfumery Basics video. So today's video is based on building an orange blossom accord or an orange blossom note. So I did a quick poll earlier this morning on YouTube and asked everybody if this was a good idea, if somebody would want to actually see how you can build an orange flower or an orange blossom accord. It was, not to say it was unanimous, but let's just say it was highly favored that it was a yes. People would like to see it. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to show you guys I would say it's a relatively easy formula, roughly 12 to 10, materials total. And I'll show you guys the full formula. I'll walk you through all the different ingredients in there and why I'm adding them in there. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to talk about two materials that were not included in the formula and why I still think they're important for an orange blossom note. But we'll talk about that in the end of the video. So, orange blossom. I am a huge orange blossom fanatic. I love the orange blossom note in perfumes. And it wasn't until recently that I actually got to smell an actual real, orange tree when it was in bloom. Surprisingly, I did not know this, but my girlfriend in her backyard has an orange tree. And this past March, we live here in California, I noticed from a distance, little white flowers were starting to bud from it. I was like, I wonder what that is. Could it be? And as I got closer and closer, the aroma started to come and I got so giddy, like a child. I got so excited to actually smell this up close and personal. And then the very following week, when the tree was fully bloomed, I just immediately started picking them left and right and putting them in mason jars so I can smell them, analyze them, get acclaimed with the actual orange blossom smell. So what I also did was I scoured the internet, looking at GCMS, analysis of orange blossom aromas, orange blossom absolutes, neroli oils, and I kind of looked at all the different materials that made up of all these, scents, and so I came up with this one generalized formula. And you guys know me. I try to keep it as simple as possible, 10 to 12, materials or less. But I wanted to capture the aroma of not only just orange blossom, the flower itself, but I wanted to capture a little bit of that essence of neroli, because for many people that already know this, orange blossom absolute is a solvent extracted from the flowers. You can do a steam distillation extraction, but you get a neroli scent, which is much lighter in scent and more kind of airy. So in this formula I'm going to show you guys is probably a mixture of the two scents combined, so you get holistically the smell of orange flower as a whole. But it leans more towards the orange flower than it does neroli. So I would say it's more 70% orange flower, 30% neroli, but when you smell the end result, I think you're going to be pleased. So anyways, let's take a look at this formula. Okay, so we've got the full formula up, and I'll walk you through each material, why it's in there, and the amounts, and things like that. This will be really quick. So at the top, you're going to see some petitgrain. Now, petitgrain is not necessarily found in orange flower itself. It's more of like a neroli kind of scent. It's very bitter, very neroli-like, and to me, it almost kind of has this, not to say lemongrass scent, but in the same way lemongrass has a green aspect with a lemony aspect, petitgrain to me has a green aspect with an orange aspect. So it fits really well for this suited, base that we're going to make. So we're going to start off with 199 parts per thousand. You'll notice this formula is going to total 1,000 parts. So when I talk about numbers, we're talking about total of 1,000. So 199 parts per thousand for petitgrain. The second part is linalool. Linalool is a natural substance that's in so many different flowers, ranging from, lilacs, rose, neroli, orange blossom. You name it. Linalool is literally in almost everything. But it is this light, effervescent, airy floral. Linalool is probably more towards the neroli side. So if you analyze neroli scent, very high in linalool content. Orange blossom, not so much, but in this formula, I wanted to do a contrast between the two. So we're gonna do 299 parts per thousand of linalool. So next on the list, we've got linalool acetate, which is slightly like linalool, but it's a little bit more sweeter, and I would say a little bit more fresher. So this is kind of like the sweeter take of linalool. So we're gonna do 149 parts per thousand of that. Now, the next material is an important one. So Aurantia has another name called Aurantiol, or by another maker, they call it Aralva. All it is, it's a Schiff's base based on two materials, which is methyl anthrolate and hydroxycitronellol. Now, when you combine these two materials, you get this Schiff's base that is sold now as Aurantia, Aralva, Aurantiol. And basically what it is you get the methyl anthrolate, kind of, not to say it's a grapey smell, but it's found, methyl anthrolate is it's a pretty big factor in the orange blossom smell. But also in the Schiff's base, because it has hydroxycitronellol, which is more of like that lighter white floral, lily of the valley muguet kind of thing. The combination of the two is important, because if you study orange blossom under a GCMS, you're going to notice that it's going to usually be a good dose of methyl anthrolate is in there, but also a material called farnesol, which is another very light lily of the valley muguet kind of material. But since I don't have farnesol, so I figured if we used Aurantia or Aralva Aurantiol, it's the same thing as using methyl anthrolate and hydroxycitronellol, which is like a muguet lily, and that kind of replaces the need for farnesol or methyl anthrolate. So this is a huge key material in this blend, so if you don't have it, you will need to get this. So we're only going to do 50 parts per thousand of the Aurantiol, because it is a Schiff's base and it's a long lasting material. It's going to carry all throughout the base notes. So this is a key component of why this orange flower accord is going to last such a long time. Now the next material excuse me, the next material is neroli. Now neroli isn't found so much in orange blossom. It is found in there, but it's such a low amount. It's usually like maybe 1 to 2%. But for me, it has this sweet, rosy kind of neroli connotation to it. So we're going to use neroli in this blend at 90 parts per thousand. Next up is neroli acetate. Neroli acetate is just another sweeter side of orange blossom. Anything with an acetate usually kind of lets you know it's going to be on the sweeter side. So this is the sweeter side of orange blossom, would be your neroli acetate. So neroli acetate, we're going to do 15 parts per thousand. Now next up is your good old-fashioned phenylethyl alcohol, also known as PEA, and that's pretty much, when people think of PEA, they think roses, which is fair enough. And mostly because it is a rosy material, but PEA is actually found in so many other florals that are not roses. So PEA is found naturally in orange blossom, but it's in such a low amount. So in this blend, we're going to keep it at 20 parts per thousand. So next up, geraniol. Again, people are probably thinking geraniol, isn't that another rosy material? Yes, it is, but it is found naturally in orange blossom. Under an analysis, you'll find 1 to 3% of orange blossom consists of geraniol. So in this blend, we're going to stick with the medium and go with 20 parts per thousand, which is roughly 2% in this formula. Next up on this list is going to be terpenol alpha. Now, this is a weird, not to say it's a weird material, but it was weird for me to reach for this and put this in here because, one, when I smell this material neat, it reminds me of lilacs. And then the more research I did, terpenol alpha naturally occurs in orange blossom. It's not a huge amount. It's usually, again, it's kind of like geraniol. It's usually in the range of 1 to 3%. So in this blend, we're going to go into the higher amount of that range, and we're going to go 30 parts per thousand for terpineol alpha. Next on the list is the must-have, indole. You have to have indole to make a proper orange blossom accord. I was shocked when I smelled the actual orange blossoms in person because I didn't realize how indolic those flowers were in real life. So orange blossom can range with their indole percent. You know, I've seen some analysis that only range, you know, maybe 0.5 to 1% indole, and it can shoot all the way up to 5 to 6% indole. So in this formula, we're going to keep it in the medium range. We're going to go with 20 parts per thousand, so roughly 2% indole. And this, again, in this formula, once you make it, you can play around with it later. If you find it, maybe you want it more indolic, you can add more indole. If you don't like it that, you know, kind of mothball-y indole scent, you know, you can dial it back. But try this formula as is first and make an assessment from there. So indole, 20 parts per thousand. Now, next up is phenylethyl acetate. So this one doesn't occur naturally in orange blossom. But since we already used PEA, which is in orange blossom, I wanted to sweeten it up with a slightly honeyed nuance. So phenylethyl acetate is like a rosy material, but it's sweeter, more on that kind of dirty honey, kind of beeswaxy kind of side. So we're gonna stick just a little bit of that in there, 10 parts per thousand. Now the next one, oranger crystals. You gotta have oranger crystals. Huge important material for an orange blossom note. It's a very, very substantive, long-lasting material, and it's another reason why this accord is gonna, you know, drag this and make it such a long-lasting, you know, smelling accord. So we are gonna do 50 parts per thousand of oranger crystals. Now, next up is isoeugenol. If you don't have isoeugenol, you know, you can go ahead and use regular eugenol, and it's basically, it's a spicy material. It smells like cloves. Eugenol is naturally occurring in a lot of florals, not so much in orange blossom. But for me, I like the spiciness that it adds in this formula. So we're gonna do 10 parts per thousand. And if you assess this blend when you're done making it and you find that you don't want it that spicy, you can dial it down and just cut that in half. But try it at 10 parts per thousand first and see what you think. Now, this next material technically is not an orange blossom, you know, material. It's more on the neroli side. So limonene, limonene D, or just regular old limonene is, or limonene, I'm sorry. Limonene is a natural kind of smelling, it almost smells like orange peels. So we're building orange blossom slash, you know, slightly neroli accord. You gotta have just a little slightly oranginess to it. But not a lot of it. Because if you use too much of the limonene or even the linalool, you're gonna launch this into more of a neroli type of scent, which we don't really want that. So limonene, or limonene, I'm sorry, we're gonna stick to just 20 parts per thousand. Just enough just to give it a little orange sparkle at the top, but not enough to actually make it smell orangey. And then the last material is benzyl acetate. Again, acetate means it's a little on the sweeter side. But benzyl acetate is a natural occurring material found in jasmine. And I found that using this at 20 parts per thousand in this formula is pretty important because orange blossom to me has slightly jasmine facets to it. Because, I mean, they both resemble that same small white petal-like flowers. They're indolic, you know, they share the same similarities. So benzyl acetate is important in this formula, at least that I found. Without it, it just kind of falls flat. But it just gives it that little extra realism, in my opinion. Okay, so that's the full formula, totaled 1 parts per thousand. Give this blend a whirl, make it up, and, you know, adjust it as necessary. I found that this works absolutely great. Like, I've made orange blossom bases in the past, but this one for some reason just really strikes it home for me, because now that I actually got a chance to smell real orange blossoms and in my face and had a sample in a jar and got to just smell it over days, it's like this one kind of hits it home for me. I kind of got excited when I made this. I already tried it in one of my blends, and it works great. It works really well. So now, two materials that I still think are important, but not important enough to put in this blend. So when you make this blend, make it, bottle it up, set it aside and use that as your orange blossom accord whenever you want an orange blossom note. So, but there's still two more materials that I think that are important, not so much to add in this formula, but you'll want to add it to your full perfume formula after you've added in your orange blossom accord. So let's say you're building a formula. It calls for an orange blossom note. So you reach for your orange blossom base that you made, you drop, you're putting it in there. If you want to kick it up a notch and just give it a little bit more kick in the bloom, go for, there's a material called neroli made by Simrise. It's a super strong material. You're probably only going to want to use 1 to maybe 3 parts per thousand max in your complete full formula, but it does sweeten it up just a little bit, but you get this kick. It almost gives it a nice kick, like it pushes the orange blossom note up a little bit. So it does give it a little bit more radiance, not in a brightening way. It just gives it a little bit more overall bloom. And now, of course, you don't need to use it if you don't have it. I think if you do have it, it's a great addition to add to your formulas after you've already made your added in your orange blossom accord, drops. The other material I think that is important to add, if you have it, is if you have natural orange blossom absolute. The reason why I don't add it into this formula here is because of cost factors. So if you're making a perfume formula and you're calling for, I want to add a little bit of orange blossom, not a lot of orange blossom, just enough to say, just to give it a little orange blossom-esque. Yeah, you don't need to add any orange blossom absolute to it anyways after the fact. But when you add like maybe 2 parts per thousand max in your full perfume formula with real orange blossom absolute in conjunction with this orange blossom accord that you're adding in, it does give it this sense of natural-like realism. It enriches it in ways you wouldn't believe just by adding 1 to 2 parts per thousand of real orange blossom absolute. But again, I didn't add it in this formula because of cost factor, because orange blossom absolute is expensive. It's an arm and a leg for 10 to 30 ml bottles. So why add it if you don't need it? The only time I would reach for real orange blossom absolute in conjunction with, in addition to using this blend, is if I wanted that orange blossom note to be the featured prominent note in the perfume. So if I'm doing a perfume where I wanted that orange blossom up front and center, the star featured note, I'll use this formula, put it in there, and then I'll add in just a little bit of real orange blossom absolute to really kick up that realism. Just take it up a notch. So that was it. Orange blossom / slightly neroli accord. Give it a blend, give it a whirl. Leave a comment down below. If you're modifying it, drop a comment and let everyone know what you guys are modifying to it. Let us all know what you think, but have fun with it. It's a good starting point for a generalized orange blossom / slightly neroli accord, okay? With that being said, until next time.